My name is Frank J. Busse. Are you ready, Jerry?
Yes, yeah, she's recording. Go ahead.
My date of birth is 4/2/1925. Place of birth was Minster, Ohio. Current address is 8268 Coppernail Way, Westchester, 45069. Place of interview is the Westchester Library. Date of interview is 19 December 2012. Branch of service of the U.S. Army. The 78th Infantry Division was my division during World War II. Service number as a non-com was 35558220, and my officer's Social Security number was 123-132-8462. Highest rank was captain. I was drafted April the 16th, 1943, while I was a pre-med student at the University of Dayton. We were transported by train to the Basic Training Center at Fort McClellan, Alabama. The city was Anniston, Alabama. Our accommodations consisted of buildings called tar paper shacks, which were constructed of wood and covered with tar paper. Might be considered potentially a fire hazard. The weather was extremely hot. Were there any problems with the fires? No, there was not. We would have one platoon in each building. I did well in most aspects of physical training, communicated well with my fellow recruits, able to handle weapons in a satisfactory manner that was selected to remain at Fort McClellan as part of the training cadre there.
Frank, can you tell us anything about your experiences as being part of the cadre?
Yes, I was a close order drill inspector, or teacher. I taught weapons handling. I worked on the fire line with the weapons being fired, and I was always considered a pretty major role in weapons and weaponry.
What type weapons were you working with at that time?
We used the M1 machine gun, the M1 rifle, and we used the water-cooled machine guns. Heavy weapons, and we had the 81 millimeter mortars, heavy mortars. After serving in this capacity, which was probably 2 years, I was sent to division headquarters and reported to Major von Grabel, an intelligence officer. He instructed me to observe and report to his office the observation of a Sergeant Drummond, who was a platoon sergeant at that time. He was also a platoon sergeant during my basic training. Sergeant Drummond served with Franco in Spain. We were part of a training cadre. I was part of a training cadre down in Georgia.
Frank, excuse me, can you elaborate on why you were observing this sergeant? Were you apprised of what you were looking for? Or?
Actually, at the time, I don't think they was interested in Sergeant Drummond. I think they were interested in me, because all the things that I had done in a short period of time was extremely important to them, to know that I had somehow or other had other training, but I did not have it. It just came to me easily.
So when did you come to the conclusion that they might be evaluating you?
Well, because of my name, for one thing, and I was speaking German, and I had officers in the company that were suspicious of me. I mean, that's my conclusion. I handled basic training so easily that they thought that I was a plant.
You found occasion to use your German speaking ability in basic training or in your advanced training?
Well, I talked to my friends and told them I could speak German, and I spoke to them in German, you know.
Yeah, I can see why.
And this is where I was headed for, was over in Germany. And it proved out it helped me immensely when I was in grade registration and a memorial officer after the war was over.
Yeah, we'll touch on that a
I
little
did 2.5 years
Right,
after
right.
the war was over in grade registration and memorial officer.
Well, how long did you have this assignment allegedly observing the sergeant?
Oh, I probably had that during my basic training, which consisted of,
I don't think so. You were in advanced training here. You were when this was going on, because this sergeant was part of your cadre in your basic training.
he was a cadre in my basic training. He was my platoon
Was the
sergeant.
Yeah, you were doing this observing after your basic training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what was happening here, it wasn't Sergeant Drummond that they were concerned about. They were concerned about me.
You.
They had it, this guy's done too much in too short of a time. You know, I had this feeling after I talked to the Major von Grable at division headquarters.
I see.
He was all he talked about was Sergeant Drummond. But I couldn't see where, you know, I didn't have any information on Sergeant Drummond prior to this time. So
Right.
I figured, oh yeah, you're looking at this old guy.
Thank you. Very good. Let's see, I think you're on the next page. Next page.
Okay. I attended the Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia. I don't know the exact dates, Gary. I just don't know that date anymore. That's been a long time ago.
What was it? Was that a 6-month school or
I was
90 days?
I was there. It was 90 days. It was 90 days, and you came out as a second lieutenant.
Yeah.
So that's where I got my first bar was a gold bar, and it was a second lieutenant.
Were you one of those then referred to as 90-day wonders?
Yep, yep, that's right. We got here I was a second lieutenant assigned to the 78th Infantry Division, which is true. And I had an opportunity to destroy an enemy machine gun emplacement, neutralizing 4 German soldiers. And I did it single-handedly. A battalion commander, Colonel Lutz, gave me the Silver Star for doing this job. He said it was above and beyond the line of duty, the thing that I had done.
Do you recall where that occurred? Where did that happen?
Wiping out this machine gun position.
Yes.
Oh, that happened it probably happened in the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
For prior to December 1944, Battle of the Bulge, I was injured by a bouncing Betty landmine. One of my men stepped on this mine and exploded. He was killed, and I got some of the shrapnel in the back of my back. They took me to a field hospital, and I spent about 2 weeks back at the field hospital. They patched me up and sent me back to the front lines, back to my unit, and I served my unit from there. Years later, in Florida, I had some problems with some issues with my back, and I told my wife to check me out. She said I had a lot of little black spots cut at the surface of my skin. So we went to a surgeon, and he and another surgeon removed what's going on. It was either 43 or 48 pieces of flak or metal shrapnel that they removed from my back. And the nurse that was on the job, she refused to work, but these two surgeons, they went ahead and they took all the metal out. She didn't like my vital signs at that time. That was her comment. But the two surgeons removed them. Now, if I could find these two surgeons, I have never received my Purple Heart. And if I could find these two surgeons down in Florida and get them to give me some type of information on what they did, if they've got these things on written up, I may be able to submit that to the government and get my Purple Heart. But to this day, I have never received a Purple Heart for being wounded.
Okay. Can you explain how this Bouncing Betty operated, how it worked?
Yeah, what happened, they would step on it and then they'd walk off of it. The thing would come out of the ground and boom. Well, it killed my he was a member of my platoon, and it killed him outright, but I got sprayed by it.
So it's like spring-loaded.
Yeah.
And what do you suppose the operational area that would be? Would it be like 20 feet or 30 feet?
Oh, I'd say it'd be 50 feet.
50 feet in diameter.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You know, approximately, was this part of the Battle of the Bulge also
That was
during your advances?
part of the Battle of the Bulge, yeah.
Okay. So, okay.
Matter of fact, I got a piece of shrapnel right here yet. See that blue?
Well, hang on there. Let's see if we can get that.
It's on my forearm here. You can just feel it.
I won't be able to feel it, but can you see it?
You can see it.
Okay. Well, this is amateur photography. I don't know if I'll be able to pick that up, but we got it here, okay? Thank you. Okay, if you like to continue.
Okay.
You had an interesting experience there while you were in the hospital. You met a captain from the quartermaster.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, I did. I had this captain from the quartermaster was in the same room with me, and we were discharged from the hospital at the same time. It was sometime in the 1960s. I had surgery done in Florida to remove the shrapnel. Oh gosh, I don't have the year right now. I don't know when it was exactly. And there's still some pieces that have not surfaced yet, come to the surface. But I do have this one piece right here that has come to the surface here, Jerry.
Frank, could we back up a moment and talk about this quartermaster captain that you met? I believe he made arrangements for you to receive some new winter clothes.
Oh, yeah. Yes, this captain, we both, he said he was going to go to his, report to his commanding officer and the quartermaster, and he took me there with him. And while we were there, General George Patton came in. And General Patton jumped all over this colonel that was the head of the quartermaster corps. He wanted to know where in the hell his fuel was, at what time, and it wasn't there, and he was madder than hell. He dropped his gun, 2 pistols he had, pearl handled pistols on the floor, took off his pants, took off his old underwear and put new underwear on, dressed up again, picked up his 2 pistols and put them back in his pockets. And that was General Patton. And all the time he was doing this, he was raising hell yet. That's true too.
I believe it.
Was he wearing his famous chrome helmet?
Oh, he had a steel helmet on too, yeah. Yep.
Well, often you heard stories about him wearing a chrome helmet, and I was just wondering if he might have had that on that day. I can't imagine why he would want to wear
Yeah.
a chrome helmet.
But he was something else. We rode on the back of his tanks one time into battle. And they took us into the battle, you know, on the back of those tanks. It was cold. Oh, it was colder than hell. But that was quite an experience in doing this, you know. But, yep. We have something here about 2 bottles of a liquor ration that you got as an officer. Well, when I was in the infantry, we would get 2 bottles each month, and we had no choice in what there was going to be, so you just got them. But when I became a company commander of the grave registration and memorial officer, I was getting double rations because of the job I was doing, and I was drinking pretty heavily. I did become an alcoholic. I'm not proud of this, but I did. And if it hadn't been for my lovely wife, she is the one, after I got discharged from the Army, she straightened me up. And she kept me from drinking excessively heavy. So I do thank her very much for what she did for me. And during my tenure in service, I did see General Eisenhower and General Bradley. I would like to mention that officers also received this liquor ration, so I assume these generals got liquor rations also.
Can you possibly describe the circumstances under which you saw Eisenhower and Bradley? Can you recall that?
Well, let's see. It had to be. I think it was in the Ardennes, in northern France, where I seen Eisenhower and Bradley. They come out into the field where we were engaged in war, and they visited us in the not on the exact battlefront, but they visited us in the rear area, and they spoke to us, and but that was my only experience with seeing those 2 generals.
Well, I think that's quite unique. Quite a few of the fellows never witnessed any of these guys. They just heard about them and read about them, They were almost like phantoms.
Yeah.
But you saw 3 of them.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there anything else that you would care to relate or you can remember about your service in that area during the Battle of the Bulge before things de-escalated and things started to slow down when you got another assignment? Is there anything else you could like to share?
I really don't know what, Larry, Jerry, I can't think of anything.
Okay,
right
okay,
offhand.
fine. Well, the next part of your career, somehow you went from the combat frontline GI to sort of a nasty position that you were assigned, that you had some problems
yeah.
accepting the assignment.
This is probably something I need to explain to you.
In detail.
I was ready to be shipped back to the States.
Excuse me. The criteria that you needed to be shipped back to the States.
I had served. The war was over, and I had no other position in Germany. So I was in a Lapel depot in France, waiting with the 36th Infantry Division, which is the Texas Division, and I was supposed to be shipped back with them. I heard my name being called, and I didn't answer being an officer, I knew this is bad news. I didn't answer the call. Well, the MPs picked me up 2 days later. They want to know why I didn't answer, and I said, well, you probably didn't pronounce my name right. Yeah.
You're right.
And, well, anyhow, I met this lieutenant colonel. He was out of West Point, and he said he had a job for me. And he told me, I said, what's this job? He said, we're going to put you in grave registration, and you're going to go out and find these Air Force people that were shot down during World War II. And I said, I don't know anything about this at all. I don't have any knowledge of this. I have no idea what I'm even going to do. Oh, he said, there isn't anything to it. And I said, what do you mean there isn't anything to it? He said, all you got to do is find the bodies, dig them up, and identify them, and then send them back and have them reinterred in a cemetery in France. That was in Epinal, France. So I said, it sounded like a big job to me, and I said, I don't think I can handle that job. Well, he said, you're going to do it. And I said, I'll tell you one thing, Colonel, you can take this job and shove it up your ass. He said, I'm going to teach you some military discipline. I'm going to have you court-martialed, and I'm going to take one of your bars. Well, he did do this. He had me court-martialed. I was a captain at the time. I come out as the first lieutenant, and he put me in charge of this grave registration outfit. He never did once come out in the field to observe what we were doing or anything else. He never came out. The only people I ever saw that were supposed to come out and see what we were doing was Busse and Bergman Funeral Home from Cincinnati. There was people from there and other undertakers from the United States, and they were supposed to, I guess they were supposed to observe what we were doing and make comments. Well, we never got any comments back from those people. The only thing I heard was we couldn't do this job in the United States, and you got to do it from here. So that's how I spent 2.5 years after the war was over. I spent 2.5 years on this assignment, and we picked up somewhere around 50,000 American aviators, and we probably picked up 1,000 Canadian aviators. This is the medal. This is the medal from Canada for picking up the 1,000 people, Canadian Air Force.
Frank, would
So
you like?
that's the oak leaf cluster.
Right. Would you like to cover this with the materials been prepared there?
Where's it at, buddy?
If you just read this, that'll cover it.
I attended Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia.
See, we're a little farther along than that.
Okay.
Excuse me. This last page. This covers your grave registration.
Okay. The objective of the grave registration unit that I ran was to retrieve the remains of the U.S. Air Force Corps personnel that had been shot down during the war. The unit was composed of field personnel and clerical staff personnel needed to do the complemented the field work in Germany, Holland, Sweden, Netherlands, and Denmark. I worked with this unit for 2.5 years after the war was over. The staff consisted of the Army and civilian personnel, requiring 40 clerk typists and 40 personnel in the field. Living quarters and mess halls had to be set up to feed these people because we were always constantly on the move. And we were frequently moved due to the nature of the work, as the clerical staff needed to be close to the field personnel. On occasion, the nature of the work of the clerical staff, I just said that. And on occasions, the burgomaster or the mayor of the towns would not cooperate with our objective, and I would have to be called in to resolve the problem. While being able to speak German, I was able to communicate with the burgomasters, and in most opportunities I had with them, it came out successful.
Would you care to relate that one story when you were talking and the mayor had something to say to one of his cohorts?
Yes, and at one time there was a burgomaster was talking to one of his cohorts, and he says he was not going to.
Give us it in German. Can you say it in German?
Well, I can't say all this in German now, but he said to his buddy, he said, we're not going to give him all that information right now. And I said to him in German, Genoffen ist Fehlscheiße, ich muss arbeiten gehen heute. And what I said in German was, enough of this horse shit, we're going to work today. And it took him by surprise, and we went to work that day.
See, the next part then is here during background on your language, during the formative years.
During my formative years, I lived in an area in Ohio that had a large population of German-speaking residents. They spoke High German and Low German, and they spoke with 4 different dialects. So I was able to converse with these European German-speaking individuals in a very effective manner later on. Often the residents were able to assist in locating and identifying grave sites of interred service personnel. Locals were often compensated for their cooperation. During my 2.5 years with grave registration, the unit recovered approximately 50,000 U.S. Army Force personnel and 1,000 Canadian Air Force personnel. And I have a medal from the Canadian government, the Oak Leaf Cluster, that we received for doing that job. The GI's dog tags were critical in the identification of an individual. The remains were replaced in a mattress cover, placed in a pine wooden coffin, and all were reinterred in France, in Epinal, France, in a cemetery. I was never required to write to the veteran's family. During my tenure, a funeral home and service staff from Busse and Borgman of Cincinnati, Ohio, visited our facility to critique our procedures, but had nothing really to offer us. Okay.
Then after that, you served your 2.5 years with the grave registration. You were separated then and shipped back to the States. You came back.
Right.
Came back by surface, back by ship.
Yes, that was by ship. That was the last thing I had, connection I had with the Army.
Do you recall what port you came in here in the States when you came back?
You know, I really don't recall that, Jerry. It's been just too long ago. I know that I had to go up to Wisconsin, someplace in Wisconsin, into a Army camp, and that's where I was let go out of the Army.
Frank, a couple of questions I'd like to ask fellows is, did you by chance bump into any chums from Minster or anybody that you went through basic with during your experience?
No, I never did.
Never did. Okay.
No, I didn't have, I never met any people from my hometown or anybody close to my hometown when I was overseas. They were all foreigners.
What about USO shows? Do you have an opportunity to see any of the USO shows?
No, I never seen a USO show in all my career.
What about the Red Cross?
Never seen a Red Cross. I was always on the front lines, and you never seen those people on the front lines.
Right.
After the war was over, there was a Red Cross show. I think it was in Fritzlar, Germany, and the battalion that I was with at that time, they had taken a semi truck, and they put a bunch of these guys on the semi truck, took them to the show. Well, when coming back, they had an accident, and they killed quite a few soldiers. I don't know how many were killed at that time, but I do remember that accident.
What about exposure to religious chaplains or rabbis or anything?
Oh yes, I'm Catholic, and we used to have mass out in the fields when there was no battle going on. The chaplains would usually drive a Jeep, and the hood of the Jeep was the altar, and we used to set on our helmets as that was our pew. Now we're out in the field now, you know, and it was on the front line. Would be on the front lines. Now, one thing we hadn't talked about, Jerry, is the feeding. And when you're on the front lines, you never eat in the daytime. You eat most of your meals after dark. The mess sergeants would come up with their food. They'd feed you, and then they would take off. That was the procedure they used in the locality that I was in.
Never heard that before. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. When were you separated then from the service? Do you recall?
Someplace, I think I wrote that down, or I seen it.
Let's see here.
I was separated from the service as a first lieutenant. Uh,
(1947).
1947, yeah.
Yeah, you were in from May 43 to November 47. 78th Infantry Division, 310th Battalion. Where'd you go?
I do have a,
Where'd you go?
a card here that tells me that I was separated as a first lieutenant.